Hello, I'm Luna Celestine, a storyteller fluent in the language of the stars. In today's video, I invite you, especially those born under the sign of Leo, to step into a deep, reflective journey where time and destiny converge in a powerful astrological cycle. The return of Saturn, known as the Saturn Return. This isn't just another celestial event. It's a turning point that reshapes the emotional and spiritual foundation of your life, most often felt between the ages of 28 and 31. To me, the Saturn return is like a cosmic mirror, one that forces you to see yourself clearly, stripping away illusions and outdated identities so you can reconnect with a stronger, more purposeful version of who you truly are. Some call it the 29-year curse, but I see it as a profound purification, a sacred pressure designed to shed what no longer serves you, so only the most resilient, authentic parts remain. In this video, we'll explore this cycle through the lens of Leo, the potential crises it may bring, the houses Saturn may activate, and how to move through this time with the awareness and dignity of a true sovereign soul. When Saturn returns to your first house, it does not knock politely. It enters like a quiet storm, steady, deliberate, and unrelenting, and begins the work of deconstructing everything you thought you were. For Leo, a sign so closely tied to identity, presence, and self-expression, this transit can feel especially raw. The first house is where your outer self meets the world, the energy people sense when you walk into a room, the way you carry your body, the way you say, "This is who I am." Saturn's presence here challenges all of that, not to diminish you, but to mature you. In this chapter, the spotlight dims. You may feel like you're disappearing, losing your shine, or questioning the very essence of your personality, the charisma, the confidence, the certainty you once wore so naturally, now feel just out of reach. It's unsettling, and yet, this emptiness is not a void. It's a clearing. I've seen this in my own chart and in the charts of many I've guided. When Saturn enters the first house, it invites, and often forces, a profound identity audit. You begin to see the costumes you've worn, the personas you've performed, not as lies, but as temporary scaffolding. They got you here, but now they must be released. The lesson is not about shame, it's about substance. If you've built your sense of self on being admired, on being needed, or on being impressive, Saturn will reveal the instability of that foundation. The applause will fade or become meaningless. The roles you've outgrown will begin to chafe, and most painfully, the mirror you've relied on, the eyes of others, may no longer reflect anything that feels true. That's when the real work begins. This is not a time for reinvention in the way you might think. Not a makeover, not a rebrand, not another performance. This is a time to strip down to essence, to rediscover who you are when no one is watching. Saturn in the first house teaches you how to hold your own weight, not by pushing harder, but by standing still, by choosing integrity over image, by reclaiming parts of yourself you've long abandoned. It can feel lonely, but the solitude is sacred. In that stillness, something solid begins to emerge. Not the show of confidence, but true inner authority. Not charm, but character. Not noise, but presence. What I've come to understand and what I offer to you is this. Saturn isn't here to take away your light. It's here to refine it, to make it sustainable, to help you become someone who doesn't need constant validation to feel worthy, someone who doesn't collapse when not seen, someone who rises quietly because they know who they are and no longer need the world to tell them. This is your invitation to become your own source. So if you feel like you're unraveling, know that you're not falling apart. You're shedding a version of yourself that was never built to last, and in its place, a truer self is forming, one who walks with quiet power, one who doesn't chase the crown but wears it with quiet grace, one who doesn't perform the role of Leo but lives it from the inside out. When Saturn returns to your seventh house, the lens shifts. no longer focused solely on who you are, but on who you are with, and more importantly, on what those connections reflect about your inner growth. If the first house is where Saturn asks, "Who are you without the mask?" then in the seventh, the question becomes, "Who are you when standing heart to heart with another, and are you brave enough to see clearly?" This is the house of partnerships, not just romantic ones, but any bond forged through commitment, mirrors, and mutual agreement. For Leo, a sign that often loves with fierce devotion and generous spirit, the seventh house can be a place of both warmth and heartbreak. Under Saturn's return, it becomes a crucible. You may find yourself facing painful realizations. The fairy tale vision of love that once gave you comfort might start to feel thin, like a story that no longer fits. Saturn is not interested in illusions. It wants truth, even when the truth is hard. Relationships that were based on fantasy, codependency, or comfort without depth may begin to strain under the weight of Saturn's scrutiny. If you've been giving too much, hoping to be loved in return, Saturn will teach you the cost of self-sacrifice that isn't rooted in mutual respect. If you've avoided commitment, keeping one foot out the door out of fear or pride, Saturn will call you out. If you've built an identity around being needed, admired, or chased, this transit may leave you feeling invisible even in the presence of others. This is not to punish you, it's to cleanse you. Saturn wants you to love, really love, from a place of truth, not projection. It wants relationships that are not built on drama or performance, but on enduring respect and emotional maturity. You may experience breakups. You may face betrayals. You may also, for the first time, come to terms with your own role in the patterns that keep repeating. There's grief in that. There's humility. But there is also profound liberation. Because in this space, stripped of illusions, you begin to see clearly what you truly need, what you're truly worth, and who is truly capable of walking beside you in the long run. And perhaps most importantly, who you must become to be the kind of partner you yourself desire. Saturn doesn't guarantee love during this transit, but it offers a foundation for the kind of love that can last decades. Not the kind that burns bright and fast, but the kind that can weather winters, change, and still grow. It clears out what was never stable to begin with and asks, are you ready to build something real? For those who are single, this can be a lonely time, but also an empowering one. It's a chance to redefine your standards, to clarify your needs, and to prepare the ground for deeper connection. For those in partnership, it may be a time of testing, but also of transformation, as the relationship either deepens in truth or dissolves for the sake of your evolution. And here is the bridge between the first and the seventh house. You cannot forge true partnership until you know who you are without it. The selfhood Saturn demanded you to build in House 1 becomes the bedrock of what you bring into House 7. You no longer love to feel whole. You love because you are whole. So if your heart feels heavy during this time, take heart in this. Saturn is not closing the door on love. It is opening the path to love that is conscious, committed, and aligned with the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. When Saturn returns to your 10th house, the energy crystallizes into something unmistakable, pressure with purpose. This is the house of career, legacy, and public standing. And when Saturn arrives here, it brings with it a sober clarity. Whatever you've built or failed to build in your professional life is now under review, and not just for critique, but for restructuring, for refinement, for reckoning. For Leo, a sign that often finds deep meaning in recognition, creative contribution, and leaving a mark on the world, this transit can feel deeply personal. Saturn doesn't just ask, what are you doing with your life? It asks, is what you're doing truly worthy of the person you're becoming? The pressure to succeed may intensify. The weight of responsibility may feel heavier than ever, but beneath the tension lies something precious. The invitation to align your outer path with your inner authority. You may experience setbacks, professional delays, failed ventures, sudden changes in leadership or direction. You might even feel invisible after years of effort. These moments can feel devastating. But Saturn is not dismantling your path to punish you. It's correcting your trajectory. It's shaving off what's unstable, unsustainable, or misaligned with your long-term purpose. This is when many people begin to question everything. Am I in the right career? Have I wasted time? Am I building something real or just chasing approval? These are not easy questions, but they are sacred ones. Saturn in the 10th house asks you to define success for yourself, not based on external applause, but on internal integrity. It wants you to do work that matters, work that lasts, work that reflects your deepest values and your most disciplined self. And if you're in a career that no longer fits, that drains your spirit, stunts your growth, or silences your truth, this transit will make that reality unmistakably clear. This isn't the time for shortcuts. It's the time to commit, to show up even when results are slow, to master your craft with humility and patience, because Saturn rewards those who are willing to earn their place, not through hustle alone, but through consistency, through excellence, through purpose. And here's the deeper connection. What began in the first house as an identity reckoning and was tested in the seventh through relationships now becomes visible in the world. Saturn in the 10th house brings everything you've been cultivating behind the scenes into the public eye. If you've done the work of self-definition and relational maturity, this is your time to embody leadership, not as a title, but as a way of being. If you haven't, if you've clung to ego-driven ambition or avoided responsibility, Saturn will confront you. But even in confrontation, there is grace. Because Saturn's tough love isn't about perfection, it's about readiness. And when you're ready, the foundations you lay now will support not just the next chapter, but the next decade. So if the climb feels steep, keep going. If the path feels uncertain, stay focused. Trust that Saturn doesn't test you without purpose. It tests you to reveal your strength, to shape your character, to ensure that when your moment arrives, you're not just standing in the light, and in that light, Leo, you will lead not from performance, but from truth. Not for applause, but for impact. Not to be seen, but to serve something greater than yourself. That is the legacy Saturn wants you to build. And you are more than capable. And now we arrive at the heart of it all. The deeper message Saturn carries through every trial, every ending, every quiet night of doubt. Saturn does not come to punish you. It comes to prepare you. So much of the fear surrounding the Saturn return comes from misunderstanding. We call it a curse. We brace for destruction. We resist the discomfort. And in doing so, we miss its wisdom. Saturn is not the force that breaks you. Saturn is the architect, the elder, the stone cutter of the soul. It arrives every 29 years not to destroy your life, but to strip it down to truth, so that what you build next will stand the test of time. For Leo, a sign ruled by the sun, where pride and expression run deep, this process can feel especially intense. The very foundations of how you define yourself, how you connect with others, how you make your mark on the world, are being reshaped. It can feel like you're losing everything, but what's really happening is this. You are being rerouted, because Saturn does not reward image, it rewards effort. It honors alignment. It demands that your outer world reflect your inner evolution. It removes what is false, not out of cruelty, but out of reverence for your potential. So yes, Saturn may take away relationships, careers, dreams you once clung to, but only because they are too small for the person you're becoming. You may feel tested. You will be tested. Again and again. And every time you are given a choice. Resist the change and call it a curse, or surrender to the lesson and discover the blessing. This is the paradox of Saturn's love. It doesn't coddle, it doesn't soothe, it strengthens, it refines, it teaches you how to carry yourself through fire and still walk forward with dignity. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches you to trust in timing. Not your ego's timing, but life's. Saturn reminds us that the most meaningful growth is never rushed, that becoming is not always loud or glamorous or visible. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it's just you, laying a single brick again and again, until one day you look back and realize you've built a foundation strong enough to hold the life you actually want. So, is this a curse or a blessing? That answer is not written in the stars, it's written in how you choose to walk through the storm. With fear or with faith, with resistance or with responsibility, with the desire to return to comfort or the courage to evolve. The Saturn return is not the end of your story, Leo. It is the turning of the page. The question is not whether it will change you, it will. The real question is, will you let it change you into someone wiser, truer, and ready for the life that is waiting just beyond this threshold? That is your choice, that is your power, and that is what Saturn came to reveal. Saturn only takes what you no longer need. It sounds simple, almost gentle, but when you're in the middle of it, when the job falls apart, when the relationship ends, when the version of yourself you've clung to starts slipping through your fingers, it rarely feels that way. It feels like loss, like failure, like punishment, but it's not. Saturn isn't cruel, it's precise. It sees clearly what we're often too attached or too afraid to release, and it waits, patiently, silently, until the time is right. Then, without apology, it removes what is no longer aligned with your becoming, not because it doesn't care, but because it does. I've seen it in charts, I've seen it in lives, and I've lived it myself. Saturn will dismantle what's built on illusion, entitlement, avoidance, or fear. It will challenge the roles you've outgrown, the beliefs that keep you small, the dependencies you mistake for love. And in doing so, it returns you to yourself, not the self you perform, but the self you are, beneath all the noise. So yes, when Saturn takes, it can feel like grief, but what's being removed was never your foundation. It was scaffolding, temporary, hollow. Saturn's wisdom lies in the long view, and what's being taken now is only what would eventually collapse on its own. This is not loss, it's clearing, it's pruning, it's preparation, because Saturn always gives something in return, but only once the ground is ready to receive, once the ego has softened, once the lesson has landed. What it gives back is deeper than what it takes: clarity, self-respect, mastery, endurance. The ability to walk through life with a quiet knowing that you can withstand change, not because you avoided loss, but because you survived it. And this is where the gift truly lies, not in what remains after Saturn has passed, but in who you've become in the process. You no longer need the validation, the approval, the illusions you once clung to. You stand in your life, perhaps simpler, perhaps more solitary, but steadier, stronger, rooted not in performance, but in presence. So if you're in the midst of this unraveling, remember this: Saturn only takes what you no longer need, but what you've outgrown is often what you fear losing most. Let it fall. Let it leave. What remains is what's real. What remains is yours. And in that emptiness, a space is carved, not for more of the same, but for what is truly meant to last. Saturn doesn't just clear the past, it shapes the path. And though it may feel like a closing, it is always, always the beginning of something enduring. As we close this chapter together, I want to leave you with this truth, not wrapped in fantasy, but anchored in something real, something earned. Your Saturn return is not here to ruin you. It is here to reveal you. Whatever house Saturn is moving through in your chart, whatever endings you are facing, whatever doubts are waking you up at night, know that this is not chaos without purpose. It is the rhythm of your becoming. The architecture of your future is being shaped right now, choice by choice, breath by breath. Through every moment, you choose truth over comfort, growth over familiarity. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being called into alignment. And that calling never comes softly. But if you meet it with courage, with humility, and with a willingness to let go of what no longer serves you, then I promise you this: what waits on the other side will not just be worth it, it will be yours. So take your time, move with intention, trust the unfolding. Saturn doesn't rush, and neither should you. Until next time, I'm Luna Celestine, and the stars are always speaking. All we have to do is listen.